Hi, I'm Ginny Robertson, founder of the On Purpose Woman Global Community and founder and publisher of On Purpose Woman magazine. I'm here with Suzanne Culberg to talk with her about her article in the January-February issue of On Purpose Woman magazine. Suzanne, thanks for being with me.
Thanks again for having me, Ginny.
And before we start talking about your article, what would you like our viewers to know about you?
As I say, I'm from Australia. I'm from Sydney. The future's looking good because for many of you, I'll be a day ahead. And
That's probably an old
I,
joke, but I didn't, I've never heard it before. So.
I was to say, oh, the questions I get asked about being an Aussie, like I think Bluey is a huge TV show in the States, and it's not small here, but it's not as big as it was over there. But anyway, I digress. I help
They wanted to know what was
women.
going on, what happened in the show or something
Oh
ahead of
yeah, my
time.
kids never got into it. It was so funny.
Uh,
They're like, but Bluey's like a huge hit, and I'm like, yeah, yeah, it wasn't. In fact, at least in my household, other kids love it, but oh, and if Tassie Devils really spin, the first time someone asked me that, because I'm originally from Tasmania, I thought they were having a joke. I was like, you can't be serious. But I've been asked that a number of times. Because remember that old cartoon with the Tassie Devil that spun?
Tasmanian devil, the
Yeah,
Tasmanian devil.
yeah, they don't
Yes,
really
that's why
spin.
we think you
So
spin. Yeah,
but yeah, I help women set boundaries and say no and put themselves first without feeling selfish.
perfect. And you're the nope coach, which I love.
100%.
Okay. And you'll find after we finish this video and I go back and edit it, you can find all of Suzanne's information in the text of the video because I can't do that ahead of time because there's not enough characters to allow me to do all of that. So, Suzanne, you had an article in the November December issue. Let's start with that one first. And it was called Cheer and the Courage to Have a Go. Would you give us a little background on that article? Just what did you cover in that?
So basically, my daughter is a competitive cheerleader. 2024 was her first year on a competitive team. Before that, she'd done recreational. And there's like, I don't know if anyone ever watched the TV show Glee. I'm currently rewatching that. There's a lot of questionable things in that. Side note, things at the time that you get away with that you watch when you're a bit older and you're like, hmm. But
Mm,
what I liked with that show is they had like the sectionals, like the local area, and then they went to the regionals. And then, so Cheers very much like that. They have a local competition, and then they have another one, and they have the state final, then they have the like Australian final. So the article I wrote for November, December, I think it was the state competition that my daughter had was competing in. And I was talking about, so they had a team there that had just got back from the world competition and they were flawless. Like they're absolutely amazing. And my daughter was enamored. And she's like, didn't you think that they were the best team ever? And all this sort of stuff. And my point of view was very different because there was another team there that had a unfortunate showing. Like sometimes you win and sometimes you don't. And I was more enamored with watching them because the courage to have a go. Every time somebody fell, every time they didn't
mm,
nail a stunt, the picking each other up, them keeping on, the grit to keep going when you know you've tanked. Like there's so many people who just would walk off or be like, that's done. Like, what's the point? And the whole point of that article was like, to be proud of yourself every step of the way, whether it be in business, whether it be something you're trying to do. There are some people that we tend to be enamored with. Like we look at the flawless people who have millions of followers and they can do no wrong, and then there's cancel culture, but that's a story for another day.
yeah.
But we tend to lose sight of the everyday Joe or Jane or person who's putting themselves out there and trying their best with what they have and how that compounds over time.
Well, you all can read that if you haven't yet. You're going to want to. You're going to want to read that one and the one we're going to talk about now. We can go to my website, which is opwgc.com/magazine. That will also be in the text of this video. So you carried that theme into the January, February issue, and you wrote about the true definition of a winner. And it's also inspired by your daughter's cheer competition. So, what was going on before her team performed that routine? And this was at another level now. What
Yeah,
level
this
are
is
you at
this
now?
this is the
Nationals?
national. Yeah, this is the
Yeah.
national. So we had teams from all around Australia and they had choreographed. So basically they keep the same routine for a calendar year, but they add more difficult stunts to it. And I think that's good in a way, so you're not having to relearn choreography and everything. But they had added these stunts to it that not once, Ginny, not once had they managed to land in training and in practice.
Mm.
And my daughter was beside herself. She was like literally in tears. She's like, I can't get on a national stage when we've never even got this in trial. And she went to the coaches because I encouraged her to. I'm like, if you feel that strongly about it, then ask if they can re choreograph it, if they can take it out. And the coaches said, like, we hear you, but without that, you'll never place. You'll never place at nationals. And it was an interesting dynamic because do you want to have a go at something that you've never done before and hope for the best to maybe get a medal? Or do you want to take it easier? And I think anyone in competition, like when you look at gymnastics or diving or things where they get points based on the difficulty of the stunt, and they were like, yep, no, this is the stunt that we're going to pull off. And so I was sitting in the bleachers with a couple of the other mums, and we're all kind of like holding on to each other, like, how's this going to go? And they nailed it. I literally lost my voice from screaming. I have never been proud. And when they came running out afterwards, they were beside themselves and they were convinced that they had won because they'd done their best. And what I wrote about in the article is your best doesn't necessarily mean the best. And then there was a quote in there from Picard, Jean-Luc Picard, and I can't remember it exactly, but it was like, you can do everything right and still fail. And they got second, which I was just like, second in a national title, we have a medal, like, oh my goodness. But they wanted to win. In cheer, they have a special jacket that only goes to the winners, and she wanted that jacket like so bad. But it was kind of like, yeah, you can do the best, you can have your best showing, you can nail it, but your best doesn't mean the best. And I think in anything in life, we can fall into the comparison game of like, well, what's the point? Or we can just be like, does it matter? I nailed it. And trying to stick to that, like, you know, be proud of yourself, no matter how some external authority gives you points based on technique.
Well, I love that you're teaching your daughter these lessons. How old is she? 12,
11.
13?
She's about to turn
11.
12.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just about to turn 11. So she's
12,
getting
well,
just sort of,
6 months actually, but I
okay.
feel like she's almost 12. She's like going on 30.
Yeah. But how wonderful that you're giving her these lessons. Now, whether she's, like going, yeah, mom, yeah, I get it, but she's still hearing it. And they'll come up at some points down the road and she'll remember it. How did she take it when you first said that? Did she go, oh yeah, I get it. Okay, I feel really good now.
No,
Thanks,
she
mom. No,
still
of
doesn't
course
get
not.
it. Like when I said to
Okay.
her that you might not have won, she didn't even hear it and register it. And I didn't say it to poo-poo, to downplay, to
Right.
dismiss, but I didn't want her to be gutted. And when the awards happened, when they came out afterward, you could see the other kids with their silver medals, like their eyes lit up and whatever. But I could just see she did the right thing. Like, but you know how someone you can tell the smile doesn't reach their eyes, and
Hmm.
and it's okay to be upset, but it's such a bittersweet thing because when you have done your best and you can't have asked anything more for yourself, but to be able to still feel that disappointment, it's such an interesting dynamic. Because when I was growing up, I didn't do a lot of sports and stuff, but I did do pistol shooting, like target shooting, because my dad was into it. So that's the only reason. Like he would go to the range, so I just tagged along and started doing it. Anyway, long story short, I remember the national competition and I shot a personal best, and I was so excited. I was beyond excited because I'd shot a PB, and I remember running to tell my dad, and he's like, "But did you win?"
Oh
And I
dear.
was just
Okay.
like, and that I quit from there. I didn't compete again because he didn't care. Like, and
Yeah.
it was like, what was the point? You didn't win. So, and I was just like, I guess from a young age, I've always been like, doing your best. And that's why I don't know if you have it there in the States, but here in Australia, we have a thing called Little Athletics, where they do sprinting, high jump, long jump each week, but they don't compete against each other. They compete against themselves, as in what was
Mm.
your personal best, and then how they give prizes is who's beat their personal best by the most. And I just think there's something in that. It's like pushing yourself to do better rather than, well, for me in a running race, there's no point. If it's, if I know there's no one in it, like all through school, it was always the same three kids who won. It just mattered which order. And it was like, for everyone else, what's the point?
Yeah. Yeah. But if you could just beat your last thing by like 10 seconds, that's like something to get excited about, right?
Exactly. And
Yeah.
think about that in business or in anything that you do. Like, I'm getting better, fitter, stronger, smarter, you're faster, whatever at this thing. And yeah, there are people who are Olympians, world champions, whatever. But it's like, who am I becoming along the way? And I think a lot of us miss that.
Hmm. So you got that lesson early and you held on to that. Do you remember if you thought, when I'm a mother, I'm going to not talk like that to my child. Probably not at that
I
age,
didn't
but
think about that at all. I just
yeah,
thought like I always felt like it wasn't enough. Whatever I
yeah.
did, it wasn't enough.
That
And
wasn't the only place that showed up
yeah,
then.
and
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
other areas of my life, it was like, am I? It wasn't until I was older that I actually questioned, am I doing this for me because it's something that I want to do, or am I doing it for
Mhm.
the accolades and my parents being proud of me? Like I went to medical school because that's what my parents wanted.
Did
And
you?
I knew straight away it wasn't for me, and I wanted to leave. And they're like, no, no, hang on, get your degree and whatever. So here in Australia at the time, it's changed since it was 2 degrees. You got one after 4 years and one after 6 years. So I just did 5 years. I actually quit in my second last year, and people were like, well, you were so close. And I was like, yeah, to being a doctor of nothing. Like you got to do intern year, residency, registrar. Like there's up to 10 more years minimum before you're actually a consultant. So that to me was the point where I was like, what do I want to do for me?
Yeah. So it's so clear how you came to this work because you have done this yourself, right? You have struggled with this, you have asked those hard questions, you have made those shifts and changes, and you help women to see that for themselves, right? And to learn to say no to those people who are trying to direct their lives, or to themselves when they're
Yeah,
in those spaces of comparison and, um, just the not good enough space. It's so pervasive, you
I
know.
was reading a book recently. The name's failing me, but if anyone wants it, let me know in the comments, tag me, and I'll find it later and circle back. But the beginning of the book talks about the difference between your eulogy values and your CV, like your resume values, and how so many of us live our lives to look good on a resume. Like I've
Mm,
achieved this, I have this many followers, I have this much cash, I made the Forbes whatever, and like all these things. But at the end of our lives, what about the eulogy values? What are people going to say? They were compassionate or they were kind or they were,
yeah.
and it's kind of like, and I think a lot of us get it confused and then we live our life for these CV resume values and we look great on paper and then wonder why we're like despondent, depressed, unmotivated, like behind closed doors. You put the smile on, like my daughter got the silver. She's like, but it's not in the eyes. And I think it's kind of like because we lose track of the meaning, the deeper meaning of things and what we're doing it for.
Oh, I so agree with that. And again, it comes, for me, it came at a very young age, getting the accolades. But much like your childhood, I remember coming home one time with, probably was in seventh or eighth grade, with one B and the rest A's. And my parents were furious with me.
At
Furious.
100%.
What happened here? What
I can
happened
still
here?
hear it.
You
What, how
know?
did you get that B? And I remember once at the watching the pistol shooting national championships, which was held at our club when I was a teenager, this guy got 10 after 10 after 10 after 10, and he got a 9. And my dad went over to him and I was with him and he said, how did you get the 9? And he goes, who cares, mate? How did I get all those
Wow.
tens? You know?
Wow.
And I just was
Yeah.
like, yeah, we tend to like people focus a lot on our weaknesses and instead of playing to your strengths. It's like these are the
Mhm.
things I'm good at. Why don't I double down on this rather than spend a lot of time and energy on something I'm not naturally good at and actually honestly don't enjoy?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. One thing I also remember growing up is when I was real young, like 3, 4, 5, I was just I was just showy. If there were more than one person in the room, I would put on a show. I would either sing or dance or just make up stories. I would just always want to be the center of attention. And at one point that stopped being cute to my mother. And she also started calling me out when I'm still little, for bragging about stuff and for saying I was good at something. And I remember her telling me, when you brag about something that you're good at, it may make someone else feel bad because they're not good at it too. And I remember even as a child thinking, that's so dumb. What about my feelings? Like, is it all about the other person? We don't want that other person to feel bad, but I want somebody to tell me I did a great job in this because and these were usually things that I really wanted to do, that I wanted somebody to acknowledge. They weren't always the things that people wanted to acknowledge, though, like you're saying. It was
Yeah,
a lot of the have tos, or this what looks good to the community or the neighbors, or, all that stuff. So, yeah, so you have to go through all that stuff so we can then show up and help other people not go through all that stuff, right? Save them a little bit of time, maybe. Yeah.
100%.
I'm thinking about something I read just this morning. You've triggered something, and I think I can find it very quickly. It's one of those daily books. It's
Oh,
called
I love
Everyday
them.
Spirit, a Day Book of Wisdom, Joy, and Peace by Mary Davis. And yesterday was Be Yourself Bravely. And she gives a story from her life, and then she talks about in the world, like what can you do out there in the world to kind of follow this. And then there's an inner piece to do, but it says, today begin with just one kind compliment directed toward yourself and repeat it often. But the more important thing is be kind in your expression of your true self. It's possible to be both honest and kind. And I really love that. I think also, especially in the climate that we're in, you can still hold your values, but also still, and kindness is more for me than it is for the other people. Sometimes it just keeps me centered and not losing my crazy mind. And I'm digressing a little bit, but I love that idea of just giving yourself one beautiful compliment every day and meaning it. And sometimes you don't mean it right away, but you can, work yourself into it.
But I
Yeah.
love that too because the compliment doesn't need to be external, as in about what I achieved.
Right.
Like it could
Right.
be that I did the thing. Like I wiped down the kitchen sink before I went to bed. Like thanks past
Mm-hmm.
me when I wake up the next morning and it's like everything's laid out.
Yay,
Or,
me. Yeah.
I took a breath and I responded rather than reacted when something
Mm-hmm.
happened. Like, because
Yeah.
sometimes it can be so easy to fly off the handle. Um, it can be, I didn't devolve into negativity. Like, if I get an email subject heading that starts with about your podcast or something, my initial can be, what have I done wrong? It's like, oh,
Yeah.
they're going to say something awesome. And then, oh, they did, and it's like allowing yourself to receive. I call it like we have the 5 second rule here. You drop something on the ground, you're like, 5 seconds, it's fine, you eat it.
Mm-hmm.
5 second rule for compliments. Like if someone says something
Mm-hmm.
nice, instead of dismissing it or downplaying it or ignoring it, just actually allowing that to land. And I think that
Yeah.
can be powerful because your point about them saying being honest and kind, I think sometimes you say, Suzanne, I really like, I don't know, whatever it is, coffee. And I was like, oh, glad that you like coffee, Ginny. It's not really my jam. I'm a tea person.
Mm-hmm.
Love that you love it. Yes. But because I think sometimes when we don't agree, then this weird cancel culture thing can happen. And this is such a mundane example, coffee or tea or whatever, or dogs or cats. But, with the internet, it's like just because I don't agree with the thing that you're saying or your point of view doesn't mean I'm arguing with you or I want to be convinced or whatever. It's just like you like this and I like that and go on with our day.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's good for our mental health as well
Well,
to
100%
do
because
that.
people have connotations. Like when my daughter did cheerleading when she first started, like my parents were like ditzy, blonde, dumb, like all these labels that stick with it. And I was like, do you know how fit they are? Do you know how much core strength it takes to do that? Like, because my daughter, apparently they're trying to petition to get it into the Olympics. And I remember my dad laughing and going, that'd never get in the Olympics. It's not a real sport. And I'm just thinking, but how do we define a sport?
Wasn't
Like,
it? Isn't it in the Olympics now?
no,
I
it's
thought
still
it
not.
was last
So
time.
breakdancing got in, but not cheer,
I
not
know.
yet.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
apparently it's more like, I don't know if this is true, so anyone feel free to disagree with me in the comments because I'm only saying I heard this from my 11-year-old, that you're more likely to get a sport in for the place that it was the origin of. And apparently the competitive cheer was an American thing, so that's why they're trying to get it in for the upcoming LA Olympics, but it didn't make it
Mm,
through yet. But
okay.
yeah, I don't know. But like in terms of like what defines a sport? According to who? Like when you think about it, diving or swimming, diving or gymnastics, someone's judging, giving you points based on thing. That's exactly what cheerleading is. So,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
yeah.
But some people just think it's still shaking your pom poms and jumping up and
Well,
down, and
they don't actually even use pom-poms in cheer.
I
That's
know, I
that's a
know.
different thing. So I found that hilarious too
Right.
because I was like, when she first started, I was like, "Where are your pom-poms?" And she's like, "Mummy," and I got all educated by an 11-year-old. So,
I bet you
but we
did.
have
I bet you
connotations
did.
for things. We hear a word or a phrase or something was done one way before, and that's how we see it forevermore. And it's like
Mhm.
there's a whole scope of things that aren't available to us. And do we want to learn or do we want to just judge and then start fighting with our family or friends about something that's
Right.
not related?
I love that. So I want to remind you all to please read Suzanne's article. You can go to my website, which is in the text of this video, and you can also go to the archives and see the one that she did that we talked about at the beginning of this video. Suzanne, how can our viewers learn about more about you and your work?
Best place to find me is my website, so suzanneculberg.com. I also have a public facing podcast called The Nope Coach, which is an interview style podcast. You can find links on my website. And I have a Patreon with a private podcast. I'm a sweary fairy, so I'll just say the show is the name. And yeah, you can come
Swearing
join me
fairy.
there.
Well, do you have anything coming up that you want to tell us about?
No, actually, as I say,
Okay.
everything's on my website. So if you go to suzanneculberg.com, go to the everything page, it'll all be there in order. I'm a content creating whatever machine. Oh, also to my newsletter. If you like what I write, hopefully I send an email about once a week or so. And yeah, that's the best place to find the happenings of what I'm up to.
You do a great newsletter. I love your newsletter, and you're just a really great writer. You have a wonderful sense of humor, and I just enjoy your writing, and I enjoy you. So thank you for sharing your wisdom and your heart, but also your humor with us, just not just in the magazine, but also in these chats with me. And before we wrap up, I'd love to have a final thought from you. We went all over the place here. You want to distill it down? What do you think is the most thing you want to leave us with today?
I think the biggest thing, like all of these overarching things, how we link them together, is like, what's in it for me? Like we tend
Mm.
to be like, what's in it for others? How does this look good? How can I add this to my resume? But like if you love it, you'll find time and space and energy and capacity and whatever for it. And if you don't love it, you won't. And things tend to change. Like many of us aren't married to our first boyfriend or still working in our first job. So if you get to the point where you don't love this thing anymore, it's okay to move on and allow yourselves to follow what's lighting you up at the moment.
Thank you. Thank you. Perfect way to end this conversation. So thank you again for being with me, Suzanne. I look forward to whatever you write for us next. Or I don't know
Thank
if
you,
you're writing it
Jenny.
for us, but you may just be giving it to us to share. So I'm not sure. Not too many people write just for us. They share their information, their other stuff that they're doing. But I want to also just thank everyone who's watching the Real Women, Real Purpose talk show, either live here on Facebook, or you might see it in the On Purpose Women Global Community group tomorrow, or you're on our YouTube channel. So just be sure and check out the website, opwgc.com, for more information on the community, our Zoom gatherings, our in-person meetings, our magazine, all that good stuff. And check out the things that are already on here. I'm losing my place here, I think. Check
It's
out
the
the
end of
Real
the
Women,
day
Real
for you.
Purpose talk. It is. It's 5:30 now. I'm tired. The sun just went down. It's dark outside. Where am I supposed to be right now? But I do want to just remind everyone that on our YouTube channel, the On Purpose Women Global Community YouTube channel, we have hundreds of interviews with women like this one I just did with Suzanne, who are just out there living their lives on purpose, making their unique difference, changing the world one person at a time, and just sharing their gifts. So be sure you check that out as well. And again, thank you all for watching.